The dust kicked up around Logan Zane's boots as he crested the final ridge and saw Elko, Nevada, spread out below him like a memory he had tried to bury for 5 long years. The settlement had grown since he left in 1873, with more buildings crowding the main street and a new church steeple piercing the desert sky. But the heart of it remained the same. His chest tightened as he urged his horse forward, the late afternoon sun of 1878 beating down on his shoulders and the mountains at his back, seeming to push him toward a reckoning he both craved and feared. He had left at 23, angry and restless, convinced the wilderness held more promise than anything this dusty Nevada town could offer, but now at 28, with a body hardened by years trapping in the high country and a heart that had never quite settled, he found himself wondering if the one thing worth having had been here all along. The first person who recognized him was old Tom Fletcher at the livery stable, whose weathered face split into a gap-toothed grin. "Well, I'll be damned, Logan Zane, is that really you under all that hair and muscle?" Logan swung down from his horse, his long dark hair tied back with a leather cord, his buckskin clothing dusty from weeks of travel. His arms strained against the rolled-up sleeves of his shirt, muscles developed from years of hauling traps and wrestling with nature itself. "It's me, Tom. Town looks different." 5 years will do that," Tom said, taking the reins. "You look different, too. Left here a boy, came back looking like you could wrestle a bear and win." Logan managed a small smile, but his eyes were already scanning the street beyond the stable. "The Lockwood family still here?" Tom's expression shifted, becoming more guarded. "Depends on which Lockwoods you mean. Old Henry passed 2 winters back. Sarah Lockwood remarried some banker from Sacramento and moved away with those boys of hers." Logan's heart hammered against his ribs. "And Amelia?" "Oh, Amelia." Tom's face softened. "She's still here. Lives in her father's old house on the edge of town, the one with the blue shutters. Runs a small garden, sells vegetables, does mending and sewing for folks. Turned down 3 marriage proposals that I know of, maybe more." The information settled over Logan like a heavy coat. She was still here. Still unmarried at 27, still in Elko when she could have gone anywhere, been anything. He had left without saying a proper goodbye, convinced he was doing them both a favor by not making promises he might not keep, by not asking her to wait when he did not know if he would ever be anything more than a restless wanderer. But the mountains had taught him something about himself, about what mattered and what did not, and her face had followed him through every season, every storm, every lonely night under the stars. "The house with the blue shutters," Logan repeated, his voice rough. "Don't expect her to welcome you with open arms," Tom warned. "She was mighty torn up when you left." Logan nodded, grabbed his saddlebags, and left Tom to tend to his horse. His boots echoed on the wooden boardwalk as he made his way down the main street. People stared, some recognizing him, others simply taking in the sight of a man who clearly belonged more to the wild places than to civilization. He stood well over 6 feet, his shoulders broad enough to fill a doorway, his hands calloused and strong, his face weathered by sun and wind, but still young enough to show the boy who had left 5 years ago. The house with the blue shutters sat at the far end of town, surrounded by a well-tended garden that burst with late summer vegetables. Tomatoes hung heavy on their vines, squash sprawled across neat rows, and herbs scented the air. Logan paused at the white picket fence, his fingers gripping the gate as he saw her. Amelia Lockwood knelt in the dirt, her dark blonde hair pulled back in a braid, her simple cotton dress protected by an apron. She was picking beans, her movements efficient and graceful, and even from a distance Logan could see that the girl he had left behind had become a woman of quiet strength and beauty. Her face had lost some of its youthful roundness, her features more defined, her bearing more assured. He opened the gate and the hinge creaked. Amelia looked up, a handful of beans in her palm, and for a moment the world seemed to stop. Her eyes, the color of sage in summer, widened with recognition and something that might have been shock or anger or hope. He could not tell. "Logan." Her voice was barely a whisper. "Hello, Amelia." She stood slowly, the beans falling from her hand back into the basket at her feet. "You have some nerve showing your face here." He had expected anger, and somehow her quiet fury was worse than if she had yelled. "I know. 5 years." She brushed the dirt from her hands, her movements sharp. 5 years without a word, no letter, no message, nothing. We all thought you might be dead. I'm sorry. You're sorry." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "That's supposed to make it better? You left, Logan. You left without even saying goodbye properly. You told me you needed to see what was out there, that you would be back when you figured things out, and then you just vanished." He took a step closer and she held up a hand, stopping him. Her eyes were bright with unshed tears, and he realized with a jolt that he had hurt her far worse than he had understood. "Why did you come back?" she demanded. "Because I couldn't stay away anymore." The truth came out rough and honest. "Because I've spent 5 years in the mountains trying to forget you, and it hasn't worked. Because you're the reason I left and the reason I came back." She stared at him, her chest rising and falling with emotion. "What does that even mean?" "It means I was young and stupid and scared." He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated with his own inability to find the right words. "I was scared that if I stayed, I would spend my whole life wondering what else was out there. Scared that I would wake up at 40 and resent you for it, even though that would have been on me, not you. So I left, thinking I needed to get it out of my system." "And did you?" Her voice was quieter now, but still guarded. "The wandering, yes. But not you. Never you." He met her eyes steadily. "I thought about you every single day, Amelia. Every sunrise, every storm, every time I saw something beautiful, I wished you were there to see it with me. And I finally realized that all those things I thought I needed to find, they don't mean anything if I can't share them with you." A tear slipped down her cheek, and she angrily brushed it away. "You don't get to just walk back into my life and say pretty words and expect everything to be fine." "I know," he said quietly. "I don't expect anything. But I had to come back. I had to tell you how I feel, even if you tell me to leave and never come back. You deserve to know the truth." She wrapped her arms around herself, looking suddenly vulnerable despite her anger. "The truth is, you broke my heart, Logan Zane. The truth is, I waited for you, even when everyone told me I was a fool. I turned down good men, kind men, because none of them were you. And I hated myself for it, hated you for having that kind of hold on me." The pain in her voice cut him deeper than any knife. "I never meant to hurt you." "But you did." She looked at him with eyes that held years of loneliness and disappointment. "And now you're here, looking like you've been living in the wilderness, all muscles and rough edges, and my stupid heart is already trying to forgive you." Hope flickered in his chest. "Amelia." "No," she shook her head. "You don't get to come back after 5 years and just pick up where we left off. If you're serious about this, about me, then you're going to have to prove it. You're going to have to show me that you're here to stay, that you're not going to disappear the next time you get restless." "I can do that," he said immediately. "I'll do whatever it takes." She studied him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. "I need time, Logan. Time to think. Time to figure out if I can trust you again." "I understand." He did, even though every part of him wanted to pull her into his arms and never let go. "Can I at least see you? Talk to you?" She hesitated, then nodded slowly. "You can come by tomorrow. Afternoon, after I finish my work. But that doesn't mean anything except that I'm willing to listen. That's all I'm asking." He backed toward the gate, not wanting to push his luck. "Thank you, Amelia, for not sending me away." She did not respond, just watched him go with an expression that was equal parts longing and wariness. Logan walked back toward town with his heart in his throat, knowing he had a long way to go to earn back her trust, but determined to do whatever it took. He took a room at the boarding house run by Mrs. Patterson, a plump widow who remembered him and clucked over how thin he was despite his obvious muscle. "You mountain men never eat properly," she scolded, already planning to fatten him up with her cooking. The room was small but clean, with a bed that felt too soft after years of sleeping on the ground, but Logan was grateful for a roof over his head. That night, he lay awake listening to the sounds of the town, so different from the wilderness he had grown accustomed to. Dogs barking, voices carrying from the saloon, the distant whistle of a train. He had money saved from selling his furs, enough to start a life if Amelia would have him, enough to buy land or start a business. But none of that mattered if he could not win her back. The next afternoon, he showed up at her gate as promised, freshly washed and shaved, his long hair still damp. Amelia met him on the porch, wearing a pale yellow dress that made her look like summer itself. She had prepared lemonade, and they sat in the shade of her porch, the awkwardness between them thick enough to cut. "Tell me about where you went," she said finally. "What you did all these years." So he told her. He told her about trapping in the high mountains, about winters so cold the air hurt to breathe, and summers when wildflowers covered entire meadows. He told her about narrow escapes from bears and wolves, about the solitude that had felt like freedom at first and like loneliness later. He told her about the men he had met, other trappers and mountain men, Native American tribes who had taught him their ways, the harsh beauty of a land that cared nothing for human comfort. "It sounds amazing," she said softly. "Terrifying, but amazing." "It was," he admitted, "but it was also lonely. I used to imagine telling you about all of it, showing you the places I found. There was this lake, high up in the rubies, so clear you could see straight to the bottom. The water was like glass and the mountains reflected in it perfectly. I must have sat there for an hour, just wishing you could see it." Her expression softened slightly. "I would have liked that. What about you?" He leaned forward, genuinely wanting to know. "What happened here? Tom said your father passed." Sadness crossed her face. 2 years ago. His heart just gave out one night. It was peaceful at least. Sarah had already left by then, couldn't wait to get away from Elko. She always hated it here, thought she was meant for something bigger. She married Franklin Pierce, a banker's son, and they moved to Sacramento. I get letters sometimes, all about society parties and new dresses. She smiled wryly. "Not really my world." "You always belonged here," Logan said. "You understood this place in a way Sarah never did." "Maybe?" She poured more lemonade. "After Father died, I thought about leaving too. But this house, this garden, it's all I have left of him. And I guess I was stubborn. I didn't want to run away just because things got hard." The unspoken accusation hung in the air between them, and Logan winced. "I deserved that." "I didn't mean," she sighed. "Maybe I did. I'm sorry. I'm trying not to be bitter about it." "You have every right to be bitter," he said quietly. "I left you alone to deal with everything. Your father's death, running this place by yourself. I should have been here." "Yes, you should have," she met his eyes. "But you weren't, and I survived. I learned that I'm stronger than I thought I was. I learned that I don't need someone to take care of me." "I know you don't need me," Logan said, "but I'm hoping you might want me anyway." She did not answer, just looked out at her garden with a thoughtful expression. They sat in silence for a while, the tension easing slightly, until Amelia finally spoke again. "Mrs. Patterson mentioned you're staying at the boarding house. What are your plans? Are you just passing through, or are you actually thinking of staying in Elko?" "I'm staying," he said firmly. "I've got money saved. I was thinking I could buy some land, maybe start ranching. Or if there's work in town, I'm not particular. I can do carpentry, blacksmithing, whatever needs doing. The point is, I'm not leaving. Not unless you tell me there's no hope for us and you want me gone." She considered this, her fingers tracing the rim of her glass. "I'm not going to tell you to leave, but I'm also not going to make this easy for you, Logan. You need to understand what you put me through." "Then tell me," he said. "Help me understand." She took a breath, her eyes distant. "When you first left, I told myself you would be back in a few months. You had talked about seeing the mountains, about trapping, and I thought it was just something you needed to get out of your system. So I waited. I kept busy with my father, with the house, with the garden. But months turned into a year, and a year turned into 2. And there was nothing. No word, no sign you were even alive." Her voice grew quieter. "People started pitching me, assuming you were dead or that you had never cared about me in the first place. Men started courting me. Samuel Morrison, the doctor's son. He was kind and steady and everything you weren't. He asked me to marry him, and I almost said yes just to stop the waiting, to stop the wondering. But I couldn't, because some foolish part of me still hoped." Logan's chest ached with guilt and regret. "Amelia, let me finish," she said. "Then my father died, and I was truly alone. Sarah was already gone, my mother had passed when I was young, and the one person I wanted, the one person I needed, was off in the mountains somewhere, living his life without a thought for me. "That's not true," he said roughly. "I thought about you constantly." "But you didn't come back," she said, and there was the heart of it. "Thinking about me didn't matter if you weren't here, and I had to accept that you were never coming back, that I needed to let go and move on." "Did you?" he asked, almost afraid of the answer. "Move on?" She looked at him then, really looked at him, and he saw the war playing out in her eyes. "I tried. God knows I tried. But no, I didn't. And I'm angry about that, Logan. I'm angry that you still have this power over me, that seeing you again makes me feel like I'm 22 years old and foolishly in love all over again." His heart soared at her words, even as he saw the pain behind them. "I never stopped loving you. Not for one single day." "Love isn't enough if you're not willing to stay," she said. "Love isn't enough if the next beautiful mountain range is going to pull you away again. It won't." He reached across the small table between them and took her hand before she could pull away. Her skin was soft despite the calluses from work, and the touch of her sent a jolt through him. "I've seen the mountains, Amelia. I've had my adventures, and I learned something important. All that wild beauty, all that freedom, it's hollow without someone to share it with. Without you." She did not pull her hand away, but tears were sliding down her cheeks now. "How do I know that? How do I know you won't wake up in 6 months and feel trapped here?" "Because I know myself now in a way I didn't before." His thumb stroked across her knuckles. "I'm not that restless kid anymore. I'm a man who knows what he wants. And what I want is to build a life here with you. I want to buy land and build a house. I want to wake up next to you every morning and work beside you every day. I want to grow old with you in this dusty Nevada town and never want for anything else." "Logan." Her voice broke on his name. "I know I hurt you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness or your trust, but if you give me a chance, I swear on everything I hold sacred that I will spend the rest of my life proving to you that I'm here to stay." She was crying openly now, and he stood, pulling her gently to her feet and into his arms. She resisted for only a moment before collapsing against his chest, her hands fisting in his shirt as 5 years of pain and longing poured out of her. He held her tightly, his own eyes burning, his face buried in her hair that smelled like lavender and sunshine. "I missed you so much," she sobbed. "I was so angry, and I missed you so much." "I'm sorry," he whispered into her hair. "I'm so sorry, Amelia. I was a fool." They stood like that for a long time, holding each other on her front porch as the afternoon sun slanted across the garden. Finally, her tears subsided, and she pulled back slightly, looking up at him with red-rimmed eyes. "I want to believe you," she said. "I want to trust that you're really back to stay." "Then let me prove it," he said, wiping her tears away with his thumbs, cradling her face in his large, calloused hands. "Give me time to show you I mean what I say." She nodded slowly. "Okay. But we take this slow, Logan. I need to protect my heart this time." "As slow as you need," he promised, even though everything in him wanted to kiss her right then, wanted to make up for 5 years of separation in a single moment. She stepped back, putting a careful distance between them, but she was almost smiling. "You should go now. I need to think." "Can I come back tomorrow?" "Yes." This time the smile reached her eyes. "You can come back tomorrow." Logan left her house feeling lighter than he had in years. The walk back to the boarding house seemed shorter, the evening air sweeter. He had a long road ahead of him, he knew, but for the first time since he had left Elko, he felt like he was heading in the right direction. Over the following weeks, Logan set about proving himself. He found work at the lumber mill, his strength and experience with an axe making him a valuable employee. The work was hard, but he welcomed it, pouring his energy into the physical labor and saving every penny he earned. On Sundays, he attended church, sitting in the back pew where he could see Amelia in her Sunday dress, her hair pinned up in a way that made his fingers itch to pull it down. After church, they would walk together, always in public, always proper, but slowly rebuilding the connection they had once shared. She told him about her father's last years, about the friends she had made in town, about the small joys she found in her garden and her sewing work. He told her more about his travels, about the lessons the mountains had taught him, about the loneliness that had driven him home. "Did you ever think about settling out there?" she asked one Sunday, as they walked along the creek that ran past town. "Finding a wife in one of the mountain settlements?" "No," he said honestly. "There were opportunities, I guess. Women in the trading posts, daughters of other trappers. But it always felt wrong, like I would be settling for something when I knew exactly who I wanted." She blushed at that, ducking her head. "You always did have a silver tongue." "It's not flattery if it's true." He picked up a smooth stone and skipped it across the water. "What about you? Tom mentioned proposals. 3, he said, but I'm guessing there were more." "A few." She sat down on a fallen log and he joined her, careful to maintain a respectful distance. "Samuel Morrison was the most persistent. He's a good man, kind and educated. He would have made a fine husband." Jealousy flared in Logan's chest, but he pushed it down. "Why didn't you accept him?" "Because he wasn't you." She said it simply, without drama, but the words hit Logan like a physical blow. "I kept thinking that maybe I could learn to love him the way I loved you, but I knew it wasn't fair to him. He deserved someone who looked at him the way I looked at you." "Do you still?" he asked quietly. "Look at me that way?" She turned to face him, her sage green eyes searching his face. "I'm trying not to. I'm trying to be sensible and cautious, but yes, Logan, God help me, yes." He reached for her hand, and this time she gave it freely, their fingers intertwining in a way that felt both familiar and new. "I'm going to make you happy, Amelia, I promise you that." "Don't make promises you can't keep," she said, but she was smiling. "I'm not." He raised her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles, watching her eyes widen and darken. "Every promise I make to you from now on, I'll keep." The weeks turned into months and Logan became a fixture in Elko once more. He bought a plot of land just outside of town, good grazing land with a creek running through it and a view of the mountains in the distance. He started building a house there, working on it every spare moment he had, pouring his heart into creating something solid and permanent. Amelia came to see it one October afternoon, bringing lunch for him in a basket. The frame of the house was up, the bones of what would be a comfortable home visible against the blue sky. It's going to be beautiful," she said, walking through the skeletal structure. "Big enough for a family." "That's the idea." He watched her move through the space, seeing how naturally she fit there. "I'm hoping to have the roof on before winter. The walls can wait until spring if they have to, but I want it weather tight." She turned to him with a curious expression. "Why are you building this now? You're still staying at the boarding house." "Because I wanted to have something to offer you," he said. "When the time comes that I ask you a certain question, I want to be able to show you that I'm serious about building a life here." She went very still. "Logan." "I'm not asking yet," he said quickly. "I know you need more time, but I wanted you to know my intentions. I'm building this house for us, Amelia, for our future." She walked over to him, her eyes shining with emotion. "You really mean it, don't you? You're really here to stay?" "I really mean it." He cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs stroking her cheekbones. "I love you, Amelia Lockwood. I've loved you since we were kids running around this town, and I'll love you until my last breath. And if you'll have me, I'll spend every day of the rest of my life proving it to you." "I love you too," she whispered. "I never stopped, even when I wanted to." He leaned down slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, but instead she rose on her toes to meet him. Their lips touched softly at first, a gentle exploration after years apart, but the kiss quickly deepened into something more urgent and passionate. 5 years of longing poured into that kiss, 5 years of loneliness and regret and hope. His arms wrapped around her, pulling her against his chest, and she melted into him with a soft sigh that made his heart race. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Amelia laughed shakily. "I've wanted to do that since the day you came back." "Me too." He rested his forehead against hers. "Does this mean you forgive me?" "It means I'm choosing to move forward," she said. "The past is the past, Logan. We can't change it, but we can decide what happens next." "And what do you want to happen next?" She pulled back just enough to look him in the eye. I want you to finish this house. I want you to keep showing up every day, proving that you're here to stay. And when you're ready, when the time is right, I want you to ask me that certain question you mentioned." "What if I'm ready now?" he asked, his heart pounding. "Then you wait anyway," she said with a smile. "Because I want this done right, Logan Zane. I want everyone in this town to see that you're committed to me, to us, to this life. I want there to be no doubt in anyone's mind, including mine, that you're here forever." "I can do that," he said. "I'll wait as long as you need." "Good." She kissed him again, quick and sweet. "Now show me the rest of your plans for our house." He spent the next hour walking her through his vision, pointing out where the kitchen would be, where their bedroom would face the sunrise, where there would be room for children if they were blessed with them. She listened and asked questions and added her own ideas, and by the time she left that afternoon, the house felt less like his project and more like theirs. The months that followed were the happiest Logan could remember. He worked at the mill during the week and on the house during evenings and weekends, with Amelia often coming to help or to simply keep him company. The town fully accepted him back, seeing his dedication to Amelia and to building a life in Elko. He made friends with some of the other men, joined the church community, and became a regular at the town gatherings. Winter came hard that year, with snow piling up and temperatures dropping below freezing for weeks at a time. Logan worked frantically to finish the house, and by the time the worst of the winter hit, he had a solid roof and walls with a good fireplace to keep the cold at bay. He moved his few possessions out of the boarding house and into his new home, feeling a sense of pride and accomplishment that was completely different from anything he had felt in the mountains. On Christmas Eve, with snow falling softly outside and a fire crackling in the hearth, Logan invited Amelia to see the finished house. She arrived bundled in a heavy coat and scarf, her cheeks pink from the cold, and he helped her out of her wraps before leading her through the rooms. "Logan, it's perfect," she breathed, taking in the solid furniture he had built, the warm rugs on the floor, the curtains she had sewn now hanging at the windows. "It's a real home." "It's missing one thing," he said, his voice slightly shaky with nerves. She turned to look at him questioningly and found him dropping to one knee, a small box in his hand. Her hands flew to her mouth and tears immediately sprang to her eyes. "Amelia Lockwood," he said, opening the box to reveal a simple gold band with a small sapphire, the color of the Nevada sky. "I know I don't deserve you. I know I made mistakes and hurt you and wasted years we could have spent together. But I also know that I love you more than anything in this world, and I will spend the rest of my life making you happy if you'll let me. Will you marry me?" "Yes," she said through her tears, not hesitating for even a moment. "Yes, yes, yes." He stood and slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into his arms and kissed her with all the love and passion he had been holding back for months. She kissed him back just as fiercely, her arms wrapping around his neck, and they stood there in the firelight, holding each other and laughing and crying all at once. "When?" she asked when they finally broke apart. "When can we get married?" "As soon as you want," he said. "Tomorrow, if you'll have me." She laughed. "Let's give it at least a few weeks. I want a proper wedding, Logan. Nothing fancy, but I want our friends there, and a nice dress, and for everything to be right." "Whatever you want," he promised, "as long as at the end of it you're my wife." They set the wedding for late January, giving Amelia time to sew a dress and make arrangements. The whole town seemed to buzz with excitement about the upcoming wedding. Mrs. Patterson insisted on making the cake, the church ladies organized a celebration supper, and even the men at the lumber mill teased Logan good-naturedly about his upcoming nuptials. Sarah sent a letter from Sacramento, apologizing that she could not make the journey in winter, but sending her congratulations and a generous gift of money. "I always knew you two would end up together," she wrote. "Even when he left, I knew he would come back for you eventually. Be happy, sister." The wedding day dawned clear and cold, the sky a brilliant blue, and the sun glinting off the snow. Logan stood at the altar in his best suit, his long hair trimmed neatly and his face cleanly shaved, and waited for his bride. When Amelia appeared at the back of the church on Tom Fletcher's arm, since he was the closest thing to family she had left, Logan's breath caught in his throat. She was radiant in a dress of cream-colored silk, simple but elegant, her blonde hair arranged in soft curls with small white flowers woven through. She carried a bouquet of dried lavender tied with ribbon, and her eyes were locked on Logan as she walked down the aisle. The ceremony was simple and heartfelt. They exchanged vows they had written themselves, promising to love and cherish each other, to weather whatever storms came their way, to build a life together rooted in this Nevada soil. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife and told Logan he could kiss his bride, he did so tenderly, reverently, sealing the promise they had made to each other. The celebration afterward was joyous, with food and music and dancing. Logan danced with his new wife, holding her close and marveling at the fact that she was finally, truly his. She glowed with happiness, laughing and talking with their friends, and he could not take his eyes off her. As evening fell and the party began to wind down, they slipped away to the house Logan had built, now their home. He carried her over the threshold, both of them laughing, and set her down gently in front of the fire he had laid earlier that day. "Hello, Mrs. Zane," he said softly, cupping her face in his hands. "Hello, husband," she replied, her eyes dancing with joy and something else, something that made his pulse quicken. That night they came together as man and wife, their love expressed in whispered words and gentle touches, in passion that had been building for months and years. Logan was careful with her, tender and patient, wanting her first time to be everything it should be. She gasped his name and clung to him, and afterward they lay tangled together in their bed, her head on his chest and his arms wrapped securely around her. "I love you," she murmured sleepily. "I'm so glad you came back." "I love you too," he said, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "And I'm never leaving again." The first year of their marriage was full of adjustments and discoveries. They learned each other's rhythms, figured out how to share space and make decisions together. Logan continued working at the mill while also building up a small herd of cattle on their land. Amelia kept her garden and her sewing work, and together they made a comfortable living. There were disagreements, of course. Amelia could be stubborn, and Logan had a tendency to make decisions without consulting her, a holdover from his years of living alone in the mountains. They had their first real fight in spring when Logan bought a bull without discussing it with her first, spending money they had been saving for other things. "You can't just make big decisions like that without talking to me," she said, her voice tight with frustration. "We're partners, Logan. This is supposed to be our life together, not you doing whatever you want." "I know," he said, running a hand through his hair. "You're right. I'm sorry. I saw an opportunity and I took it without thinking. It won't happen again." "It better not," she said, but her anger was already fading. "I married you because I wanted a partner, not a dictator." "And I married you because you call me on my nonsense," he said, pulling her into his arms. "Forgive me?" "This time," she said, but she was smiling as she kissed him. They learned from their mistakes and grew stronger as a couple. By the time summer arrived, they had settled into a comfortable partnership, working side by side to build their ranch and their life. The cattle herd grew, the garden flourished, and they saved money toward future plans. It was in late summer that Amelia realized she was pregnant. She had suspected for a few weeks, but when the doctor confirmed it, her joy was tempered by nervousness. She told Logan that evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. "I'm going to have a baby," she said quietly. "We're going to have a baby." Logan went very still, then slowly turned to look at her, his eyes wide. "Are you sure?" "The doctor confirmed it today. I'm about 3 months along, I think. The baby should come in February or early March." A smile spread across his face, growing wider and wider until he was grinning like a fool. Then he was pulling her into his arms, holding her tight, laughing with pure joy. "We're going to have a baby," he repeated, awe in his voice. "Amelia, we're going to be parents." "Are you happy?" she asked, even though his reaction made the answer obvious. "Happy doesn't even begin to cover it," he said, pulling back to look at her. His hand went to her stomach, still flat but soon to grow. "This is everything. You're everything." The pregnancy progressed smoothly through the fall and into winter. Logan was attentive to the point of being overprotective, constantly worrying about Amelia doing too much. She tolerated his fussing with good humor, knowing it came from love, but also insisting on maintaining her independence as long as she was able. As her belly grew round with their child, Logan would talk to the baby every night, his hand on her stomach, telling stories about the mountains and the town and the life they would build together as a family. Amelia would watch him with soft eyes, falling more in love with him every day. The baby came on a cold February night in 1880, 2 years after Logan had returned to Elko. The labor was long and difficult, and Logan paced outside the bedroom door in a panic while the doctor and Mrs. Patterson attended to Amelia. Her cries of pain tore at him, making him feel helpless in a way he had never experienced before. Finally, as dawn was breaking, he heard a new sound, the thin, reedy cry of a newborn baby. The doctor opened the door, smiling. "You have a son," he said, "a healthy baby boy, and your wife is fine, just tired." Logan rushed into the room and found Amelia propped up in bed, exhausted but glowing, with a tiny bundle in her arms. She looked up at him with tears streaming down her face. "Logan, meet your son," she said. He approached carefully, almost afraid to breathe, and looked down at the tiny red face peeking out from the blanket. The baby was perfect, with a shock of dark hair and tiny fists waving in the air. Logan felt something crack open in his chest, a love so fierce and immediate that it brought him to his knees beside the bed. "He's perfect," he whispered, his own eyes wet with tears. "You're perfect. Thank you, Amelia. Thank you for this, for him, for everything." She reached out and took his hand, bringing it to rest on the baby's head. "What should we name him?" They had discussed names but never settled on one. Logan looked at his son, thinking about the journey that had brought him to this moment. "What about Henry, after your father?" Amelia's face crumpled with emotion. "Henry. Yes, I love that. Henry Zane." Little Henry thrived, growing strong and healthy under his parents' devoted care. Logan proved to be a natural father, patient and loving, happy to walk the floor with a crying baby or change diapers or do whatever was needed. Amelia watched her husband with their son and felt her heart could not possibly hold any more love. The years flowed by like water. Henry grew from a baby into a curious toddler and then a rambunctious little boy. The ranch expanded, the herd grew larger, and Logan and Amelia's reputation as hard-working, honest people became well established in Elko and the surrounding area. When Henry was 3, Amelia became pregnant again. This time the pregnancy was easier and the birth faster, and they welcomed a daughter they named Lily into the world. She had Amelia's blonde hair and Logan's blue eyes, and her brother was immediately smitten with her. Life settled into a comfortable rhythm. Logan would work the ranch with help from hired hands, coming in for meals with his children climbing all over him, their laughter filling the house. Amelia managed the household and garden, baked bread and made preserves, and created a warm, loving home for her family. On Sundays, they would go to church as a family, Henry trying to sit still and Lily babbling happily in her mother's arms. Afterward, they would often have picnics by the creek or visit with friends in town. Logan and Amelia's love had deepened over the years, growing from the passionate romance of their youth into something solid and enduring, a partnership built on trust and respect and genuine affection. Sometimes, on quiet evenings after the children were in bed, Logan and Amelia would sit on the porch and talk about the past. "Do you ever regret it?" Amelia asked one such evening when Henry was 6 and Lily 3. "Giving up the mountains, settling down here?" Logan looked at her in surprise. "Not for a single second. Why? Do you think I do?" "Sometimes I wonder if you miss it," she admitted. "The freedom, the adventure, all of that." He reached over and took her hand, bringing it to his lips. "The mountains were beautiful, and I learned a lot out there, but they were never what I was really looking for. I was looking for this. For you, for our children, for a place to belong. I found all of that here." "Sometimes I feel guilty," she said quietly, "like maybe I kept you from the life you were meant to live." "Amelia, look at me." He waited until her eyes met his. "You are my life. This ranch, these children, this town, you. This is exactly where I'm meant to be. The only regret I have is the years I wasted being too stupid to realize it." She smiled, reassured. "We've built something good here, haven't we?" "We've built something amazing," he corrected. "And we're not done yet." True to his word, their family continued to grow. When Lily was 4, Amelia gave birth to another son, whom they named Thomas after Tom Fletcher, who had become like a grandfather to their children. 2 years later, another daughter arrived, Caroline, with her father's dark hair and her mother's gentle nature. The house that Logan had built expanded over the years, with new rooms added as needed, a bigger porch, a barn, and outbuildings. The ranch prospered, becoming one of the most successful in the area. Henry grew into a tall, strong boy who idolized his father and spent every spare moment learning ranching from him. Lily was sweet and artistic, always drawing or making up stories. Thomas was adventurous and fearless, giving his parents frequent heart attacks with his climbing and exploring. Caroline was the baby, everyone's favorite, spoiled equally by her parents and siblings. As the children grew older, they would sometimes ask their father about his time in the mountains. Logan would tell them stories, carefully edited for young ears, about his adventures and the things he had seen. But he always ended these tales the same way. "The mountains taught me a lot," he would say, "but they also taught me what's really important, and that's family and home and the people you love. Everything else is just scenery." When Henry turned 16 in 1896, he was nearly as tall as his father and just as strong from years of ranch work. He had started courting a girl from town, Emily Morrison, the granddaughter of the same Samuel Morrison who had once courted Amelia. Logan and Amelia watched their son fumble through his first romance with understanding and amusement. "Remember when we were that age?" Amelia said one evening, watching Henry ride off to visit Emily. "I remember being terrified you'd realize you were too good for me," Logan said, pulling her close. They were in their 40s now, with silver threading through their hair and lines on their faces. But to him, she was as beautiful as the day he had come back to Elko and found her in her garden. "I had the opposite fear," she admitted. "I was afraid you'd realize Elko wasn't exciting enough for you." "It's plenty exciting," he said, kissing her temple. "It's given me everything I ever wanted." Lily, at 13, was showing talent as a seamstress and had started helping her mother with more complex sewing projects. She talked about maybe going to San Francisco someday to study design, and while the thought of his daughter leaving made Logan's heart ache, he supported her dreams. He had learned that you could not cage the people you loved, that sometimes you had to let them fly and trust they would come back. Thomas, at 11, was convinced he wanted to be a lawman, much to his mother's dismay. He had a strong sense of justice and was always standing up for the underdog, getting into scraps defending younger kids from bullies. Caroline, at 9, was still deciding what she wanted to be, changing her mind weekly between schoolteacher, doctor, and rancher like her father. The years continued to pass, bringing joys and sorrows as all years do. Tom Fletcher passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 82, and the whole town mourned the loss of one of its founding members. Logan and his sons served as pallbearers, and Amelia wept for the man who had been like family to her. There were hard years when drought threatened the ranch, and good years when the cattle brought premium prices. There were illnesses and injuries, triumphs and setbacks. Through it all, Logan and Amelia faced everything together, their love the foundation that held their family strong. Henry married Emily Morrison when he was 20, in a wedding that was twice the size of his parents had been. The young couple settled on a piece of land Logan had given them, starting their own ranch with Logan's help and guidance. A year later, they made Logan and Amelia grandparents for the first time, with the birth of a daughter they named Amelia after her grandmother. Lily did go to San Francisco to study, breaking her mother's heart even as both parents supported her. She wrote home faithfully every week and returned after 2 years with skills and knowledge that she used to start a dressmaking business in Elko. She had grown sophisticated and worldly, but her heart remained rooted in her hometown. Thomas became a deputy sheriff at 19, fulfilling his childhood dream. He approached the job with the same fierce sense of justice he had always had, earning respect throughout the county for his fairness and integrity. Caroline surprised everyone by falling in love with ranching and declaring she wanted to stay and help run the family operation. Logan could not have been prouder, and he started teaching her everything he knew about managing land and cattle. In 1905, when Logan was 55 and Amelia 54, they celebrated their 25th wedding anniversary. The whole family gathered for a party at the ranch house, which was now a sprawling, comfortable home filled with memories and love. Henry and Emily were there with their 3 children. Lily came with her new husband, a quiet banker named Peter, who adored her. Thomas brought the girl he was courting, a schoolteacher named Margaret. Carolyn helped her mother prepare the feast, refusing any help from the grandchildren who wanted to help, but mostly just got in the way. As the sun set and the party moved to the porch and yard, Someone called for a speech. Logan stood, Amelia at his side, and looked at the faces of his children and grandchildren, his friends and neighbors. 25 years ago, he began, I married the love of my life. It was the smartest thing I've ever done, and every day since then has been a gift. We've built this ranch together, raised these amazing children together, and created a life that's richer than anything I could have imagined. He turned to Amelia, taking her hands in his. You saved me, Amelia. I was lost and you gave me a home. You gave me purpose and love and a reason to be the best man I could be. Everything good in my life comes from you. Amelia was crying, happy tears that she did not bother to wipe away. And you came back for me, she said, her voice carrying across the quiet yard. You could have stayed in the mountains, stayed free and wild, but you came back. You chose me, and you've chosen me every day since. I love you, Logan Zane. They kissed to the cheers and applause of their family, and Logan thought about the journey that had brought them to this moment. The restless boy who had left Elko searching for something he could not name. The lonely mountain man who had finally understood what he was missing. The moment he had crested that ridge and seen the town spread out below, knowing he was finally coming home. He had found what he was looking for, not in the wilderness but in a dusty Nevada settlement, in the eyes of a girl who had waited for him, in the life they had built together from love and hard work and commitment. The mountains were still there, visible on the horizon, beautiful and wild. Sometimes Logan would look at them and remember his years of wandering, the freedom and the loneliness. But he had no desire to go back. His wandering days were over. He had found his place, his purpose, his home. As the party continued around them, children running and playing, adults talking and laughing, Logan held Amelia close and whispered in her ear, "Thank you for waiting for me." She smiled up at him, her eyes still as bright and lovely as they had been when they were young. Thank you for coming back. And that, Logan thought, was the truth of it. The mountains had called to him once, but love had called louder. He had answered that call and found everything he had ever needed right here in Elko, Nevada, in the arms of the woman who had always been his home. The years after their anniversary continued to bring changes. Logan and Amelia gradually stepped back from the day-to-day operations of the ranch, turning more responsibility over to Caroline and the capable hands they employed. They had earned their rest and they took pleasure in the simpler things now, in quiet mornings drinking coffee on the porch, in visits from grandchildren who were growing up faster than seemed possible, in the comfortable companionship of a marriage that had weathered decades. Thomas married his schoolteacher Margaret in a simple ceremony, and they settled in town near the sheriff's office. Lily's dressmaking business thrived, and she and Peter bought a house on Main Street with a large workroom for her designs. The family remained close, gathering for Sunday dinners and holidays, their bonds strengthening rather than fraying as the years passed. More grandchildren arrived, filling the ranch house with noise and laughter whenever they visited. Logan, now a grandfather many times over, proved to be just as devoted to his grandchildren as he had been to his own children. He would take them riding, teach them to rope, tell them stories about the old days. The grandchildren adored him, this big, strong grandfather with silver in his long hair and laugh lines around his eyes. Amelia took equal joy in her grandchildren, baking cookies and sewing clothes and passing down family recipes. She had become the matriarch of a sprawling family, and she wore the role with grace and warmth. Her garden still flourished, tended now with the help of her daughters and granddaughters, and she still made the best preserves in the county. In 1910, when Logan was 60 and Amelia 59, they took a trip together, their first real journey since Logan had returned to Elko 32 years earlier. They traveled to San Francisco to visit the city where Lily had studied, and then up into the mountains where Logan had spent his wandering years. Amelia saw for the first time the places Logan had described to her over the years. The high meadows filled with wildflowers, the crystal-clear lakes reflecting snow-capped peaks, the vast expanses of wilderness that had once called to her husband so strongly. They camped under the stars, Logan teaching Amelia the skills he had learned decades ago, and she marveled at the beauty, even as she understood why he had ultimately left it behind. It's incredible," she said one evening as they sat by their campfire, the mountains towering around them. "I understand the appeal now. Why you needed to see this, to experience it." "It is incredible," Logan agreed, his arm around her shoulders. But you know what I realized? Beauty without meaning is just scenery. These mountains are spectacular, but they don't mean anything to me beyond their own existence. You, our children, our grandchildren, the ranch, our life in Elko, all of that has meaning. That's what makes it matter. She leaned into him, content. I'm glad we came, though. I wanted to see what called to you. And now you have, he said, kissing her forehead. And tomorrow we can start heading home, she laughed. Ready to get back already? Always, he said honestly. This is nice for a visit, but home is where I want to be. Home is wherever you are. They returned to Elko with stories and photographs, and Amelia declared herself satisfied with her adventure. She had no desire to become a mountain woman, but she was glad to have seen that part of Logan's past, to understand him more completely. The second decade of the new century brought both progress and challenge to Elko. Automobiles began appearing on the streets, telephones connected homes and businesses, electricity lit up the night. The town Logan had returned to in 1878 had grown into a thriving small city, connected now to the wider world in ways that would have been unimaginable back then. There was talk of war in Europe, disturbing news that seemed very far away but grew increasingly ominous. Thomas, as sheriff now, following his predecessor's retirement, had to deal with new challenges in law enforcement. Henry expanded his ranch, adopting modern techniques and equipment. Lily's dress shop incorporated fashion from New York and Paris. The world was changing rapidly, but the core values that Logan and Amelia had built their life on remained constant. In 1915, they celebrated their 40th wedding anniversary with another large gathering. Logan was now 65, his long hair completely silver but still thick, his body still strong despite the aches that came with age. Amelia was 64, her blonde hair also turned to silver, her face lined but still beautiful in Logan's eyes. Their children gave a toast at the party, Henry speaking for all of them. Our parents taught us what real love looks like, he said, his voice emotional. They showed us that marriage isn't just about the good times, but about weathering the hard times together. They built a legacy not just in this ranch or in this town, but in the family they created and the example they set. We love you both more than words can say. Logan and Amelia stood together, surrounded by 4 children, multiple grandchildren, and even a few great-grandchildren now, and felt the weight of their blessings. They had lived a good life, a meaningful life, and the proof was all around them in the faces of the people they loved. As the party wound down and the last guests departed, Logan and Amelia found themselves alone on the porch as they had been so many evenings over the years. The stars wheeled overhead, brilliant and distant, and somewhere in the darkness a coyote called. 40 years, Amelia mused. It feels like both forever and no time at all. Best 40 years of my life, Logan said, pulling her close. She fit perfectly against his side, as she always had. Mine too, she agreed, even the hard parts. Especially the hard parts, he said. Those are what made us stronger. They sat in comfortable silence, 2 people who had shared a lifetime together and still found comfort and joy in each other's presence. The restless young man who had once fled this town, seeking something he could not name, was long gone, replaced by a man who had found everything he needed right here. The lonely girl who had waited and hoped had become a woman surrounded by love and family, secure in the knowledge that her faith had been rewarded. Do you remember that day you came back? Amelia asked. When you showed up at my gate after 5 years? Every detail, Logan said. I was terrified you'd tell me to leave and never come back. I almost did, she admitted. Part of me wanted to, just to hurt you the way you'd hurt me. What stopped you? She thought about it. Hope, I guess. Hope that maybe the boy I'd loved had become the man I needed. And I was right. Logan turned to look at her, cupping her face in his weathered hands. I will never stop being grateful that you gave me that chance, that you saw something in me worth saving. You saved yourself, she corrected. You made the choice to come back, to stay, to build this life. I just loved you through it. Your love made all the difference, he said. It still does. He kissed her then, a kiss that held 40 years of marriage, of partnership, of love that had deepened and matured like fine wine. When they pulled apart, both of them were smiling. Let's go to bed, Amelia said. I'm tired. Me too, Logan agreed, standing and helping her up. His joints protested a bit, reminding him of his age, but he ignored them. He had work to do tomorrow, grandchildren to play with, a life to live. They walked into the house hand in hand, past photographs on the walls documenting their life together. Wedding pictures, baby pictures, family gatherings, milestones and memories captured in sepia and black and white. Each image told a story, and together they told the story of a life well lived, of love that had endured. As they prepared for bed, moving through the familiar routines of a long marriage, Logan thought about the path that had brought him here. If he could go back and talk to that restless 23-year-old boy, what would he say? That the mountains were beautiful but ultimately empty? That real adventure was found in commitment and family? That the bravest thing he would ever do was not facing down a bear or surviving a blizzard, but opening his heart to love and staying when things got difficult? All of that was true, but he suspected that young Logan would not have listened anyway. He had needed to go, needed to wander and search, and find out for himself what mattered. The important thing was that he had eventually found his way home, back to Amelia, back to Elko, back to the life he was meant to live. Amelia climbed into bed beside him, and he wrapped his arms around her, pulling her close the way he had done thousands of nights before. She sighed contentedly and nestled against his chest, her hand over his heart. "I love you," she murmured, already half asleep. "I love you too," he whispered into her silver hair. Always. The years continued their steady march forward. Logan and Amelia grew older together, their steps slower, but their love undiminished. They watched their grandchildren grow up and start families of their own, creating new branches on the family tree. The ranch continued to thrive under Caroline's management with Henry's guidance and support. In 1920, when Logan was 70 and Amelia 69, they attended the wedding of their oldest grandchild, little Amelia, who had been named after her grandmother. She was marrying a young veterinarian from Reno, and the ceremony was filled with 3 generations of family, all connected by the love that Logan and Amelia had started so many years ago. At the reception, someone asked Logan the secret to a long and happy marriage. He looked at Amelia, who was dancing with one of their great-grandchildren, her face alight with joy, and he smiled. "Choose someone you want to build a life with, not just someone you're attracted to," he said. "Then choose them again every single day. Through the good times and the bad, through the exciting times and the boring times, through disagreements and disappointments, keep choosing them, keep showing up, keep doing the work. That's the secret." It was simple advice, but profound, and it had served him well for over 40 years. He had chosen Amelia when he came back to Elko. He had chosen her when he built their house, when he asked her to marry him, when they faced challenges and celebrated triumphs. He chose her still, every morning when he woke up beside her, every evening when they sat on the porch together, every moment in between. That winter was hard, with heavy snows and bitter cold. Logan, now feeling his age more acutely, spent more time indoors than he liked. Amelia fussed over him, making sure he stayed warm and rested, and he let her, knowing that caring for him gave her purpose and joy. On a cold February morning, with snow falling softly outside, they celebrated Logan's 71st birthday with a family gathering. All 4 of their children were there, along with numerous grandchildren and great-grandchildren. The house was full of noise and laughter and love, and Logan felt overwhelmed by his blessings. As evening fell and the party quieted, Logan found himself thinking about time, about mortality, about legacy. He and Amelia had been lucky, blessed with long life and good health, but he knew those gifts would not last forever. What would remain when they were gone? He looked around at his family, at the love and connection that bound them together, and he knew the answer. This would remain. The values they had instilled, the example they had set, the love they had shared. It would continue through their children and grandchildren and all the generations that would follow. Amelia found him standing by the window, watching the snow fall, and slipped her hand into his. "What are you thinking about?" "How lucky I am," he said honestly. "How grateful I am for every day I've had with you." "We're not done yet," she said firmly. "We have more days ahead of us." "I hope so," he said, pulling her close. "But even if we don't, even if this was our last day, I would die a happy man." You've given me everything, Amelia, everything that matters. She looked up at him with tears in her eyes. Don't talk like that. We have more time. We have to see these babies grow up, see what becomes of them. Then we will, he promised, kissing her forehead. We'll stick around as long as we can. And they did. Through 1921 and 1922 and into 1923, they continued their life together. They moved more slowly now, tired more easily, but their love remained constant. They still sat on the porch in the evenings when weather permitted. They still held hands and shared stories and laughed at old jokes that no one else understood. Logan's health began to fail in the spring of 1923. Nothing dramatic, just a gradual slowing down, a loss of appetite, increasing fatigue. The doctor said his heart was wearing out, that at 73 years old, with the hard life he had lived, it was simply his time. There was nothing to be done except make him comfortable and let nature take its course. Amelia refused to accept it at first, tried every remedy and treatment she could think of, but Logan gently stopped her. It's all right, he told her one evening as they sat together in the bedroom they had shared for 45 years. I've had a good life, a long life. I'm not afraid. I'm afraid, she said, tears streaming down her face. I don't know how to be without you. You'll figure it out, he said, taking her hand. You're the strongest person I know, and you won't be alone. You have our children, our grandchildren, all the family we built together. They'll take care of you. It won't be the same without you, she sobbed. No, he agreed, but you'll be okay. You'll honor me by living, by continuing to love our family, by being the amazing woman you've always been. Over the next weeks, as Logan grew weaker, the family gathered. Henry came and sat with his father, thanking him for everything he had taught him about ranching and about being a man. Lily came and read to him from his favorite books, her voice soothing. Thomas came in his sheriff's uniform and told his father how much he had always looked up to him. Caroline came and held his hand and cried, her father's favorite girl saying goodbye. The grandchildren and great-grandchildren came in shifts, some old enough to understand what was happening, others too young to realize they were saying goodbye. Logan greeted each one with love, imparting what wisdom he could, telling them how proud he was, how much he loved them. But it was Amelia who never left his side. She slept in a chair next to his bed, held his hand through the long nights, talked to him even when he was too weak to respond. She told him stories of their life together, reminded him of moments they had shared, thanked him for every day, every year, every memory. On a warm May morning in 1923, with Amelia holding his hand and sunlight streaming through the window, Logan Zane took his last breath. He was 73 years old, and he died peacefully, surrounded by love, in the house he had built for the woman he loved. Amelia felt the moment he left, felt the squeeze of his hand go slack, felt the presence that had been with her for nearly 50 years slip away. She bent over him and wept, her body shaking with sobs, grief pouring out of her in waves. But even through her sorrow, she felt gratitude. Gratitude for the life they had shared, for the love that had sustained them, for every precious moment they had been given. Logan had come back for her all those years ago, had chosen her and their life together over the wild freedom of the mountains, and that choice had created everything good in her life. The funeral was attended by hundreds of people. Logan had been respected and loved in Elko and the surrounding area, known for his integrity, his kindness, his devotion to his family. The church overflowed with mourners, and tributes poured in from people whose lives he had touched. Henry gave the eulogy, his voice breaking as he talked about his father. He was a good man, Henry said. He worked hard, loved his family, kept his word, and treated everyone with respect. He taught us how to live with honor and die with grace. We will miss him every day, but we carry him with us in everything we do, everyone we are. His legacy lives on in all of us. They buried Logan on a hill on the ranch he had built, overlooking the land he had loved and the town where he had found his home. His gravestone was simple. Logan Zane, 1850–1923, beloved husband, father, grandfather. He came home. In the days and weeks that followed, Amelia struggled with her grief. The house felt empty without Logan's presence. The days stretched long and lonely. But true to his prediction, she was not alone. Her children rallied around her, making sure she ate and slept, keeping her company, helping her navigate her new reality. Slowly, painfully, she began to adjust to life without him. She found comfort in her family, in her grandchildren who needed her, in the routines of daily life. She continued to tend her garden, finding solace in the earth and the growing things. She continued to sew and bake and participate in church activities. But every evening, she would go out to the porch where she and Logan had spent so many hours together, and she would sit in her chair with his empty chair beside her, and she would talk to him. She would tell him about her day, about the family, about the sunset and the stars and everything she wished he could see. And sometimes, when the wind rustled through the trees just right, she could almost hear his voice answering her, telling her he loved her, telling her he was still with her. Amelia Lockwood Zane lived another 7 years after her husband's death. She saw more great-grandchildren born, watched her family continue to grow and thrive. She remained sharp and engaged until the end, a beloved matriarch who held the family together with her love and wisdom. She passed away peacefully in her sleep in 1930 at the age of 79. Her children found her in the morning, lying in the bed she had shared with Logan, a peaceful smile on her face. They liked to think that she had gone to join him, that they were together again wherever souls go after this life. They buried her next to Logan on the hill overlooking the ranch, her gravestone matching his in simplicity. Amelia Lockwood Zane, 1851-1930. Beloved wife, mother, grandmother, she waited for him, and he came home. The ranch continued through the generations that followed. Henry's son took it over, then his grandson, each generation building on the foundation that Logan and Amelia had laid. The house remained in the family, expanded and updated, but still fundamentally the same structure that Logan had built with his own hands in 1878. The story of Logan and Amelia became family legend, told and retold to each new generation. The mountain man who left to seek his fortune and found his heart. The faithful woman who waited and was rewarded. The love that endured through separation and hardship and time itself. Their great-great-grandchildren would stand on that hill where they were buried and look out at the land they had claimed, the life they had built, and feel connected to something larger than themselves. They would understand that they were part of a legacy, part of a love story that had created them all. In Elko, Nevada, in a town that had grown from a dusty settlement into a thriving community, people still remembered Logan and Amelia Zane. The old-timers would tell stories about them, about their devotion to each other and their family, about the example they had set for what a marriage could be. And sometimes, on warm summer evenings, if you stood on the porch of the old Zane ranch house and listened very carefully, you could almost hear them. The rumble of his deep voice and the music of her laughter, the sound of two people who had found in each other everything they had ever needed, who had built a life together that mattered, who had loved each other from youth to old age and beyond. Their story was one of redemption and faithfulness, of second chances and enduring love. It was a story that proved that coming home was sometimes the greatest adventure of all, that the most important journey was the one back to the people who loved you. It was a story that reminded everyone who heard it that true love was not just a feeling, but a choice, made over and over again, day after day, year after year. Logan Zane had left Elko searching for something he could not name. He had wandered the mountains and lived wild and free, but ultimately he had found that what he sought was not out there in the wilderness. It was back where he had started, in a settlement he had thought too small to contain him, in the heart of a woman who had loved him enough to wait. And Amelia Lockwood had proven that faith and patience could be rewarded, that waiting for the right person was better than settling for the wrong one, that true love was worth fighting for and believing in, even when it seemed impossible. Together, they had created something beautiful and lasting, a family, a legacy, a love story for the ages. And long after they were gone, their descendants continued to benefit from the foundation they had laid, from the example they had set, from the love they had shared. The Wild West had been a time of change and challenge, of hardship and opportunity. It had shaped the people who lived through it, forged them in fire and wind and endless sky. But for Logan and Amelia, the true measure of their lives was not found in the history books or the tales of frontier adventure. It was found in the quiet moments, the daily choices, the steady accumulation of years spent loving each other. On that hill overlooking the ranch, two simple gravestones stood side by side, marking the final resting place of two people who had lived and loved extraordinarily well. The wind sang through the grass, the sun set in glory over the mountains, and somewhere in the eternal, two souls walked together still, hand in hand, forever home.